First of all, Rolex itself doesn't sell watches to consumers, so they wouldn't have an official list of any kind. They sell to dealers, ADs, at their pleasure, and the dealers are independent business entities who can choose to run their business their own way. Given what I said about ADs above, it's certainly possible that some of them have a true waitlist that they faithfully execute on chronologically. This is in general not true though. ADs need to make money, and much like DeBeers, Rolex will never sell an AD only the in models with high demand. So if your AD wants a Submariner and a few steel Daytonas, they're going to have to buy a bunch of precious metals, 31mm Datejusts, two-tone Yacht Masters, a few Cellinis, and so on. And these are the watches dealers end up showcasing at their stores because people buy them very seldomly. But then there are the Rolex models which everyone wants, and Rolex doesn't respond to market demand by producing more of those models. Say, let's pretend I am a celebrity everyone knows, and I walk straight into a Rolex dealership, exchange smiles and pleasantries around, and ask to the owner to buy that GMT Master 2 I have seen in the shop window. Do you really think he would refuse and put me in a waiting list? The fat majority of Rolex stores are independently run businesses which have no ties with the Rolex company. If they choose so, one day they could decide to dump the company and switch to, say, Omega. The truth is that while they have some models in excess, others are in exceptional demand, like the steely professionals, and they need to carefully choose the buyers. So today, we are going to discuss about the Rolex watches which you can buy immediately without a waiting list. Before starting, don't forget to like and subscribe. Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller. The legendary Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller is a big watch. The capital B has very much been used on purpose. Coming in at a seemingly huge 44mm in size, it doesn't sit as wide as many large Panerai dive watches, but it is the acrophobia-inducing height of 17.7mm that makes it feel a touch unwieldy, especially when you're wearing it on the commonly preferred bracelet. The watch case housing the Rolex 3235 movement can seem very top-heavy. The trick is to pop the watch on a rubber strap and it will instantly become far more wearable. The Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller works well in pretty much every lifestyle situation, although non-custom shirt cuffs can prove to be a bit of a stretch. This watch is priced between $15,000 to $16,000, Rolex Datejust 36. When we talk of icons in the watchmaking industry, the conversation could not be credibly exhaustive if the Rolex Datejust 36 were left unmentioned. It was not only a trailblazer upon its launch in 1945, but it has also remained the benchmark for elegant simplicity. In terms of versatility, few watches can hold a candle to the ever-appropriate Rolex Datejust, and it is no wonder that it is easily one of the most popular luxury watches ever created. When it debuted, the Rolex Datejust was the first automatic wristwatch with a jumping date complication displayed via a window in its dial. Nowadays, it seems hard to believe something we so frequently take for granted could ever have been revolutionary, but it was. The classic 36mm Rolex Datejust was the watch that first set the standard for how a date display on a wristwatch should function. Talking about its price, it depends upon different factors. Rolex Explorer 124-270. I have a slight confession before we get started here. I don't particularly care for sport tool watches with no bezel. It's a small thing, but to my eye, certain watch types just need one. Something about how they balance the size of the dial against the rest of the case, it just feels harmonious to me. This is likely the single biggest factor in my never taking the Rolex Explorer seriously within the context of my own collecting. I have a sub that's got a bezel, all is well, but as we all know, tastes evolve, and a few years back, I noticed myself gradually warming up to the idea of the Explorer. Sure enough, when Rolex introduced a new Explorer earlier this year at its original 36mm sizing, my interest went from, oh, that's nice, to, oh, I could see myself wearing that. This watch is priced at $6,500. the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Air King. Even more than the Explorer, the Rolex Air King tends to be overlooked and less considered than models such as the Submariner, the GMT Master, or the Datejust. One of the brand's most long-lasting collections, the Air King was launched in 1945 and intended as an entry-level model, following multiple Air watches produced by Rolex during World War II for pilots. Measuring 34 mm in diameter, it was rather large back in the days, hence the King in the name, but also was a fairly simple time-only watch. At the end of the 1980s, Rolex updated the Air King with a new case, a new movement, and mostly a new dial design. The reference 14000 indeed came for some versions with 369 applied markers, a bit like the Explorer but not luminous, and stick markers between them. Other dials, more classic with only baton markers, were available. Updates concern the arrival of the caliber 3000 and sapphire crystals. But the 34 mm diameter remained. The reference 14010 added an engine-turned bezel for a more luxurious look. In 2007, Rolex again updated the Air King with the references 114200, and while the base movement remained the 3130, it was now chronometer certified. This 34 mm entry-level collection discontinued in 2014. After a 2-year period without an Air King in the collection, Rolex surprised the masses with one of its most daring models to date, and quite a drastic change compared to the previous watches. Gone was the entry-level idea. Gone was the discreet look. Gone was the 34 mm case. The 2016 Rolex Air King 116900 was far larger, flashy, and designed like nothing else the brand had ever produced. And here came what certainly is the most controversial watch Rolex has ever released: Rolex Yacht Master. This is also one of the watches which is usually available without any waiting period. Rumor has it Rolex wanted to drastically update the Submariner, but were scared that the changes were too extreme. The Submariner was essentially their poster child and arguably their most iconic watch. Fearing backlash, they created a whole new line. Rolex rarely creates completely new watches. The last time they made a new watch before the Rolex Yacht Master was in 1964, when the Daytona was introduced. Luckily, it paid off, as the Yacht Master was pretty well received. Relatively uncommon, however, so stressful to wear. I have owned it for almost exactly 1 year, and I personally try to enjoy every second I wear it. I even changed it with 0 scuffs. However, I would recommend this watch to anyone minutely interested. I have no regrets having owned 2 of them like an insane person, but who in the watch collecting world isn't insane?